Hi, everybody. It's Jay back with the results of the Banana Peel animation contest. Congratulations, first of all, just for getting something entered, getting something done and entering it. That's an accomplishment in itself when you already have a job. I know how hard it is to get something done outside of work. Um, but anyway, you all did interesting work. I think there's something good about each of them. And because there are only 10, I thought I would just go through and tell you my thoughts on each one very briefly. But first, I'm going to do a critique of the one that I chose as the winner. And that was hard to choose because it depended on whether I was thinking about the animation quality or the storytelling or the timing or the phrasing. So, like I said, each of them had something to offer. But the one I ultimately chose as the winner is the one with the graffiti artist, just because I felt like it was ambitious and told a story and used lots of props and was kind of choreographed in a nice way. So that's my choice, and here we go with the critique. Okay, so here's my critique of the graffiti artist. Let's play it once. Okay, so I like the overall story. Like I said, I like the fact that the banana peel is there right from the beginning, and when he hits the trash can, the banana peel flies out there, and we already can tell that this is kind of a no good guy because he's wearing a mask and he's just being kind of destructive, knocking over trash cans for no apparent reason, and then getting ready to graffiti. And he gets some instant karma when he sprays himself in the face. Then, as he steps backwards, he gets more karma from stepping on the banana peel. And then I like the way the lid falls on his head, and then the bat comes back and hits him again. So he's gotten a lot of punishment for his evil crimes. And so I like that about it, that it has kind of a whole moral tale. And it's got a lot of action, and it's just kind of fun to watch. My first comment about it, though, is that it seems a bit rushed. And like right from the very beginning, the minute we see him, he starts swinging his bat. And one kind of general rule about animation is that in the first 8 frames or so of a new setup or a new scene, you don't want to usually have any big action, because the audience is trying to take in a lot of things like what's the setting, who is the character, what's going on here. And that first 8 frames goes by so quickly that it almost happens before you have a chance to think about anything. So I think it would be better if he were just standing there with the bat and then reared back into his anticipation and then have him swing the bat and hit the can. So I would have added a little bit of time to the beginning. Another thing I don't like about the beginning is the composition. It seems kind of awkward that the character is way over here to the side of the frame, and that his bat goes off screen. It just kind of seems like not the greatest camera work. And you end up moving the camera anyway, and I'm not sure that you really need that camera move in there. Like, I'm kind of thinking if the camera were maybe at this position roughly, that you could have just held the camera through the whole thing and not moved it. So I generally feel like you shouldn't move the camera unless you really have to. That's just sort of my general rule. And also, I just think this would give you a better composition from the beginning. Okay, my next comment is about this place where he kicks the can. It's not bad, and maybe you wanted it to feel like just sort of a casual gesture that doesn't, where he doesn't have to use his body much. But I think that the body, the lines of action could be stronger. I do like the way you're shifting his weight over to the right to get his weight more over his left leg. So that's good. But I think it would have been a little stronger if you pulled his hips even more over. And pulled this leg up more. I also think that would give you a little more dynamic silhouette, getting the arm with the bat out away from the body and so on. And then you would have a curve that's kind of like that. And then when he kicks it, I would have more of a reversal of the curve and make it more like this. And kind of get more curve in his body. So that would give more impact to the kick. So in general, I would say don't be afraid to move the hips around, to move them, left and right, and to try to get stronger lines of action through your body. Okay? Do you see how in this version the body doesn't really change angle? So it's sort of like the kick didn't really have much of an impact on him. And then I see here when he turns around, you do kind of a cheat where he just suddenly, the bat just kind of shifts to the other arm. I don't really know what software you're using here. I think this might be Flash, but I'm really not sure because I've never kind of done 3D looking animation in Flash, and I don't know the limitations. But and this kind of works as a cheat when you do this quick turn. I mean, it kind of feels like it's okay. Where is that? Let's see. But yeah, it felt very rushed and kind of poppy to me. So, I mean, and I don't know if it's possible, but I would have probably brought this arm out there further and gone for, more of a nice arc going around his body, so that the arm with the bat would just swing around behind him. Something like that. And then timing wise, let's see. Yeah, okay, so, I want to talk a little bit about the camera move. I mean, I already talked about how I thought maybe the camera move wasn't really necessary, but let's say you have to have a camera move in there. If you do, what you want to do is let the character lead the action. Like, do you see here how he's just kicked the can, but he hasn't started to turn or move toward the right or anything, and yet the camera is panning over toward the right. And it's sort of like the camera is anticipating what he's going to do. So you always want to think about it as if you were a real live action cameraman and you're filming somebody and you don't know exactly what they're going to do. So typically they will start to move and then you'll start to move the camera a split second later. So I hope that makes sense. But anyway, I would first let the character start to turn and then I would start the camera move and then I would let him arrive at his position and then let the camera arrive. And I would add slow ins at each end too so that it was a smoother camera movement. Okay, and then I I also feel like he needs a little bit of time there. He just, like the spray can appears out of nowhere, which is fine. But it all happens so quick right there. So if you were able to actually animate his left arm going around his body, and then I guess his right arm, it would have been nice to, let's see, where would I do that? I was thinking if he like reaches into a pocket and then pulls out the spray can. Yeah, that part's kind of tricky, but either way, it would be nice if it were delayed. So like um, maybe he would turn. He would turn with his arm just out here, empty, and then anticipate, and then kind of put his hand in his pocket and then pull out the spray can. That would have given us more time to actually see the spray can, and then he would then hold it up first so we see it, and then he starts to spray. Right now, it just all happens so quickly that it's a little hard to follow. So as I was saying, I would generally like to see more time spent in this pose before any spray comes out, just so that we had time to adjust to it or understand what's going on. I think also a little bit more time here would have been good after the spraying, before he reacts, and then he starts to step back. And I like this animation basically. I like the way he, curls down, bends forward, and I think that works pretty nicely for the line of action. And then he starts stepping backwards, and then he hits the banana peel. Now, one thing about this is it also seems rushed. Well, that didn't play at the right speed. I feel like I see him step on the peel, and then I see him up in the air. I feel like it was just a little bit rushed. Like right now, there's only one frame where his foot is on the banana, and then this blur frame. I would have added some more frames in there where his foot just started to go forward and the banana peel with it. And probably then did my smear. And then into this pose up here with the leg way up in the air. I also think it would have been nice to have the banana peel go flying off. Actually, something like that. Just the whole banana peel slipping part would just be a little more clear. Let's see if that looks any good. Okay, so then I feel like this works pretty well. I like the way he was flying up in the air, throws the bat up in the air, and then has some hang time here, and then falls pretty quickly. And he makes a pretty good impact. I also like the way you have one leg hitting first. Like first you have one arm and one leg, and then the other arm, and then the other leg. The fact that you offset the body parts is really good. One thing you could have also probably done is gotten more of a feeling of squash on the landing. Like, for example, if this foot, now let's go back to red. this leg stretched out more, and then came back to normal. And maybe the other leg could do a similar thing to get a nice feeling of stretch or squash, whatever you want to call it. And then back to normal. Anyway, that just might help give a little bit stronger impact. And I like the way you have when the bat comes down and hits the can, I like the way you have a little reaction on his body. It actually it might have been even funnier if his legs then went up in the air a little bit as a reaction of, from this coming down, his legs go up as a reaction. It would be kind of fun. And then he settles in. So yeah, anyway, nice work on this. Yeah, so I think the timing on the fall and the last part with the bat coming down, I think all that works pretty well. So congratulations, nice work.